Have you ever bought something you didn't even really want just because a flashing red timer on your screen screamed, only two left?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've all been there.
Right. Or maybe you were just sitting on your couch on a Tuesday night, you're perfectly happy, until you open your phone and see a friend's flawlessly curated vacation story, and you instantly feel this hollow pit in your stomach.
It's awful, but it happens to all of us. And what's really wild is that feeling isn't an accident. It's a highly engineered psychological response that plays on our deepest vulnerabilities.
Welcome to the A Better Version of Myself YouTube channel. If you're tuning in today, it means you're here with us to learn, to grow, and to take back a little bit of control over your own mind.
Exactly.
Today on the Deep Dive, we're taking our source materials and pointing the lens at something that impacts, well, almost every single one of us on a daily basis. We're digging deep into the psychology of FOMO, the fear of missing out.
And we're not just talking about the mild bummer of missing a Friday night dinner party here.
No, not at all. Based on some incredible new psychological and market research spanning from 2024 through early 2026, we're going to show you how FOMO has completely mutated. It's morphed from a trivial social anxiety into this really complex psychological chain reaction.
It's actively eroding your mental health, it's draining your bank account, and believe it or not, it's driving massive corporate boardroom strategies right now.
It's everywhere.
The scope of it really has exploded. But our ultimate goal for this deep dive isn't just to diagnose the problem and, leave you feeling overwhelmed. We want to guide you toward a practical, research-backed solution. We're going to help you transition from the constant, exhausting anxiety of FOMO to the genuine peace and autonomy of JOMO, the joy of missing out.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because calling FOMO a chain reaction really changes how I think about it. I mean, we usually treat it like a random fleeting emotion,
Yeah.
right? Like a sudden sneeze.
Right, yeah, like it just happens to you.
Exactly. But the research paints a totally different picture. Could you break down the actual psychological mechanism at play here?
Sure. So researchers in 2025 finally mapped this out as a 4-step serial mediation model.
Which is a very fancy way of saying what?
It's just a highly academic way of saying it's a strict sequence of falling dominoes. You don't get to step 4 without knocking over step 1 first. FOMO rarely, if ever, just hits you out of nowhere. It is highly predictable.
A domino effect. Okay, so what knocks over that first domino?
Step 1 is unmet needs. FOMO almost always triggers when your basic psychological needs aren't being met in your actual physical day-to-day life. In psychology, we categorize these fundamental needs into 3 distinct buckets. First is autonomy, which is feeling like you have control over your own life. Second is competence, feeling capable and effective at what you do. And third is relatedness, feeling truly and deeply connected to other human beings.
So when you have a sudden void in one of those areas,
That first domino falls.
it reframes things completely. So say I've had an incredibly chaotic day at work where my boss micromanaged everything I did. My sense of autonomy just took a massive hit. I'm feeling out of control. So what does the brain do next to cope with that?
It leads directly to step 2, which is social comparison. Because you're carrying around this internal deficit from a bad day, you start looking outward for a baseline. But specifically, it triggers what researchers call intensified upward social comparison.
Upward, meaning looking at people doing better than you.
Exactly. You aren't just casually observing others. You are actively, and frankly somewhat unfairly, evaluating your own real, unfiltered, messy life against the highly curated, beautifully filtered highlight reels of everyone else's lives.
So you're comparing your behind-the-scenes chaos to their opening night premiere.
That's a great way to put it.
I'm guessing step 3 is where the actual mental health hit happens, because that comparison is a totally rigged game.
It is, and that's where the floor completely drops out. Step 3 is self-esteem erosion. This constant upward comparison causes a measurable and often very steep drop in your baseline self-esteem. You look at the massive gap between your stressful reality and their curated projection, and your brain literally registers that gap as a personal failure. You feel like you're falling behind.
Which brings us to step 4, where the behavioral loop really locks its jaws onto you. Because nobody likes feeling like a failure, so we look for a quick fix.
Step 4 is problematic usage. You feel awful. Your self-esteem is eroded. To soothe that incredibly uncomfortable feeling, you compulsively check social media again.
You go right back to the well.
Right back. You're hunting for a dopamine hit, a distraction, or just some form of cheap external validation. But returning to the source of the anxiety just restarts the entire cycle. It reinforces it deeply and leads directly to severe social media fatigue, what the literature calls SMF, and ultimately complete digital burnout.
It's incredibly fascinating when you lay it out as a sequence like that. I like to think of it like eating junk food when you're actually just thirsty. You aren't checking your phone for the 50th time today because you genuinely want to see more content. You're reaching for it because you're trying to fill a fundamental psychological void. You need connection or competence or control,
Yeah.
but you're trying to quench that profound thirst by eating salty potato chips. It doesn't hydrate you at all. It just makes the craving for relief so much worse.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. You're attempting to treat a symptom with the very pathogen that caused the disease in the first place. The brain wants relief, but it's searching in the exact environment designed to make you feel inadequate.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because the data we're looking at from 2025 shows that this doesn't look the same across the board. The triggers and the coping mechanisms for FOMO affect different generations in totally distinct ways.
The generational divide really stood out in the recent studies. Let's look at Generation Z first, encompassing ages 14 to roughly 26. The overall prevalence of FOMO in this group is significantly higher than in any other demographic. They are practically swimming in it.
And their triggers are very specific to real-time cultural relevance, right?
Very much so. For Gen Z, the primary triggers are tied directly to social status and trending lifestyle events. It's the panic of missing out on a cultural moment right as it happens. But what's fascinating is how they're adapting to it. Instead of broadcasting their lives more to compete, they are retreating into what sociologists now call dark social.
Dark social. It sounds a bit like a covert ops mission, but it really just means private communication channels away from the public eye.
Exactly. It's the great migration away from the public feed. They're abandoning the pressure cooker of the Instagram grid or the TikTok main page, and they're seeking refuge in private group chats, locked Discord servers, and long-form voice notes.
That makes total sense. They're trying to fulfill that missing relatedness need in a much smaller, safer environment where that toxic upward social comparison isn't being shoved in their faces by an algorithm.
You've got it. Now, contrast that with millennials, roughly ages 27 to 42. We see a moderate prevalence of FOMO here. It's not quite at the fever pitch of Gen Z, but it's still wildly impactful. And the triggers are completely different. Millennials aren't stressing as much about missing a trending party.
No, for millennials, the battlefield shifts from social trends to career milestones and professional achievements. It's the deep anxiety of scrolling LinkedIn and seeing a peer get promoted, or opening Instagram to see an old college roommate buy a house or launch a startup.
Right, and their coping mechanism is entirely different from Gen Z's dark social. Millennials tend to lean heavily into the concept of digital detoxes. They'll declare they're unplugging for a weekend to reset their baseline.
But the impact of all this isn't just an emotional hangover. It is hitting people right in their bank accounts. The financial data we uncovered is frankly shocking, and it shows how expensive this psychological loop really is.
The financial consequences are staggering. According to the 2025 data, 61% of Generation Z report feeling active, daily pressure to overspend just to keep up with their peers' lifestyles. And for millennials, 38% feel immense pressure to match the home or lifestyle status of their social circles.
Let's pause on that 38% for a second. That is almost 4 in 10 millennials who are looking at their friend's new kitchen island or their perfectly landscaped backyard on social media and genuinely feeling like their own life is a failure. That's not just wanting nice things. That is a structural attack on their sense of competence, and it drives them to pull out a credit card to fix a psychological wound.
And marketers know exactly what they're doing with this, too. They weaponize that exact feeling. The industry term for it is urgency-based purchasing.
Like the timers we talked about at the start.
Exactly. When you're shopping online and you see those artificial scarcity cues like the flashing red text saying, "Only 2 left at this price," or a literal countdown timer ticking away that isn't a gentle nudge to inform you about inventory. That is a deliberate, highly engineered psychological tactic designed to completely bypass the rational decision-making center of your brain. It routes the signal straight to the amygdala, which is your brain's emotional fear center.
So you aren't even thinking, do I actually need another pair of headphones? You are just reacting to the biological threat of missing out on survival resources. Your brain is in fight or flight mode over a discount code.
And the consequence of these daily amygdala hijacks is a massive wave of personal debt, particularly among young adults who are constantly exposed to these triggers across multiple screens. They're buying things they don't want with money they don't have to impress people they aren't even really interacting with.
But it doesn't stop with young people buying things they don't need on the internet. And this is the part of the research that totally blew my mind. This exact same psychology scales all the way up to the top of the corporate ladder.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see something completely wild happening in the highest levels of the business world. A landmark 2026 study published in the Journal of Business Research coined the term organizational FOMO.
The great AI panic.
That's it. You're seeing CEOs, legacy corporations, and tech startups making completely reckless pivots into artificial intelligence. And the research clearly shows these massive financial decisions are rarely based on sound long-term business strategy. Instead, they are driven by a visceral, almost primal fear that their competitors are pulling ahead and gaining an insurmountable lead.
It's institutional herding behavior. You have to build a bridge here because it's wild to think about. You have billionaires and highly educated boards of directors acting on the exact same psychological impulse as a teenager looking at a party they weren't invited to. Their amygdalas are being hijacked by the idea that another company is having an AI party without them.
The underlying hardware in the human brain doesn't change just because you put on a suit and sit in a boardroom, and the results of organizational FOMO are disastrous. The study shows this panic consistently leads to the degradation of a company's core products, massive financial resource drain, and severe employee burnout as entire teams are forced to scramble after constantly shifting anxiety-driven goals just to say they're doing AI.
Which perfectly transitions us to the really dark side of FOMO. We've touched on digital burnout and employee exhaustion, but the recent literature points to something even more severe for our baseline mental health.
The psychological toll is escalating beyond just feeling a bit tired. In 2025, researchers identified a new subconstruct called online FOMO. This isn't just the fear of missing a party or a promotion. This is the literal physiological anxiety a person experiences when they are simply physically disconnected from their device or their data stream.
It's that horrible feeling when you leave your phone at home, you realize it halfway to work, and your heart rate actually spikes, your palms get sweaty, you feel naked.
And the data here is incredibly alarming. This specific online FOMO is now a documented, terrifying predictor for clinical depressive symptoms, particularly in university students. The inability to disconnect without experiencing severe physical anxiety is wearing down our psychological resilience. We are losing our ability to just exist in a quiet space.
And it destroys our ability to actually get anything done, too. The research notes a major decline in self-regulatory capacity among people suffering from this.
Right. And self-regulatory capacity is basically your brain's ability to manage its own attention and behavior. It's your executive function. When FOMO depletes that capacity, you lose the ability to maintain deep focus. People high in FOMO are significantly more likely to procrastinate and struggle to complete tasks that require sustained, concentrated thought. You can't write a report or read a book because you're constantly interrupting yourself to check for updates.
But there is a glimmer of hope in the research, because eventually the human brain just gets exhausted by living in a constant state of alarm.
What's fascinating here is how the market is being forced to adapt to our exhaustion. We are entering what researchers are calling the trust economy. Consumers are developing what is termed manipulation fatigue. We're all just fundamentally sick and tired of being pressured. We see that flashing red countdown timer, and instead of feeling panic, we just feel deep annoyance.
We know it's a trick now. The illusion is broken.
The curtain has been pulled back. And because of this manipulation fatigue, forward-thinking brands are actively pivoting away from FOMO-based marketing, which relies on pressure and false urgency, and they're moving toward JOMO-based marketing. This new approach centers on transparency, authenticity, and a fundamental respect for the user's time and autonomy. They're realizing that giving people space actually builds brand loyalty better than giving them a panic attack.
So what does this all mean for us? We know the mechanism, we know the damage it causes from our wallets to the boardroom, and we know even the market is trying to correct itself. How do we, as individuals, actually fix this in our own lives?
The first thing to understand is that the fix is not just deleting all your apps. That's a huge misconception that sets people up for failure. You can delete Instagram today, but if you don't address the underlying unmet needs we talked about in step 1, your brain will just manifest that FOMO somewhere else. Breaking the cycle requires practicing intentional gratitude and building internal validation. You have to break the upward social comparison loop at its absolute source.
It's about actively reclaiming your attention autonomy. And we have 3 very practical, research-backed strategies from the sources for you to apply immediately. Strategy number 1, the 5-minute buffer rule.
This is a brilliant yet incredibly simple intervention. As we discussed, the impulse to check social media is often a micro-stress reaction. Your brain wants a quick hit to soothe anxiety. So the action here is straightforward. Before you open any social or news app, set a physical timer for 5 minutes. During that time, drink a glass of water, look out a window, or just sit there.
And that 5 minutes is going to feel agonizing at first. Your brain is going to throw a tantrum because it's being denied its instant pacifier. But the why behind this is entirely neurological, and that friction is exactly where the rewiring happens. By forcing that 5-minute pause, you literally break the automatic dopamine loop. You force the decision-making process to move out of the emotional amygdala, which is screaming, "Look now," and up into the rational prefrontal cortex, which can calmly ask, "Do I actually need to look at this right now, or am I just bored and stressed?"
Strategy number 2 takes that a step further into your daily routine. You need to curate deep focus sanctuary hours. Since we know online FOMO destroys your self-regulatory capacity, you have to actively retrain your brain to handle deep work again.
The action for this one is to designate 2 hours every single day where your phone is physically in another room, out of sight, out of mind. And this is key to making it work. To prevent that emergency anxiety, the fear that someone desperately needs you and you're letting them down, you notify your inner circle beforehand. You tell your partner, your kids, your key coworkers, "I am totally unreachable for these 2 hours."
The why here connects directly back to our first domino, unmet needs. By successfully completing 2 hours of uninterrupted deep focus, you are directly rebuilding your sense of competence. You're proving to yourself that you are capable and effective. When you feel competent, you naturally reduce your vulnerability to FOMO triggers later in the day. You don't need external validation because you just proved your own worth to yourself.
I really love how these build on each other. And our third strategy is to audit your digital comparisons.
Because FOMO thrives on upward social comparison, you have to ruthlessly control the inputs. The action is to intentionally scroll through your following list today. If you see an account, even if it's a real-life friend or a family member, that consistently makes you feel lesser than, behind in life, or unsuccessful, you must mute or unfollow them immediately.
And there should be absolutely no guilt attached to this. The why is simple. It stops the erosion of your self-esteem at the absolute source. Think about it. You wouldn't invite a person into your living room every single morning to sit on your couch and tell you that you aren't good enough. So why are you inviting them into your brain via your phone? Evict them.
To help integrate these 3 strategies, the research highlights a structured 7-day JOMO transition tracker. The emphasis here is on intentionality, not absolute perfection.
Well,
You aren't trying to become a monk, you're just trying to build a new habit.
let's walk through the key days of this 7-day challenge. Day 1 is the silence. Your goal here is to go into your phone settings and turn off all non-human notifications. No news alerts, no app badges, no likes notifications. If a human being isn't directly texting or calling you, your phone shouldn't light up. The silence is going to feel weird, but lean into it.
Then we jump to day 5, the reflection. This is all about generating internal validation. At the end of the day, you write down 3 things you did or experienced that were meaningful, but that you did not post online. You are teaching your brain that an experience has intrinsic value, even if it isn't externally validated by an audience of acquaintances.
Day 6 leans into what Gen Z is actually doing right. Dark social. Your goal is to replace 30 minutes of mindless public scrolling with one deep, meaningful one-on-one text conversation or a phone call. Reach out to someone. Rebuild that fundamental need for relatedness without an audience.
And finally, day 7 is the JOMO win. Your objective is to say no to one social invitation or obligation that you do not truly want to attend. You make the conscious, deliberate choice to protect your peace over pleasing someone else.
But to really make JOMO stick long-term, it requires a fundamental psychological reframing. You can't just follow a checklist. You have to change how you talk to yourself.
The internal monologue is everything. The FOMO mindset constantly asks a deficit question. It looks at a situation and asks, what am I losing by not being there? To truly transition to JOMO, you must consciously force yourself to ask a surplus question. What am I gaining by being here right now?
What am I gaining by being here right now? That is incredibly powerful. It reminds me that JOMO is exactly like a muscle. When you first start skipping notifications or saying no to events or sitting with that 5-minute buffer, it feels weak. It feels highly uncomfortable. You might even feel a little guilty or anxious. But with every single skipped notification and every intentional pause, your sense of autonomy grows stronger.
You're making the shift from feeling like a helpless victim of your digital environment to being the active architect of your own attention.
Which is exactly what this channel is all about. So, to wrap up our deep dive today, We started by uncovering that FOMO isn't just a fleeting worry. It's a four-step psychological chain reaction driven by unmet needs, fueled by toxic social comparison, and resulting in eroded self-esteem and burnout. We saw how marketers manipulate our amygdala to drain our bank accounts, and how that same primal fear pushes powerful CEOs into reckless AI panics. But most importantly, we learned that the antidote isn't running away to live in the woods. It's actively reclaiming our economy through the joy of missing out.
This raises an important question. As we watch JOMO become a recognized, highly sought-after marker of mental wellness and true personal autonomy, will we eventually see missing out become the ultimate societal status symbol? Could we one day experience FOMO about not having enough JOMO?
Oh, that is a fantastic mind bender to leave everyone with. I love it. Thank you to everyone out there for sharing your time and your attention with us today. Remember, building these JOMO muscles takes time and it's uncomfortable at first, but you do not have to do it alone. If you found value in today's deep dive, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, A Better Version of Myself. Join our community, keep learning, reclaim your time, and let's keep building better habits together. See you next time.